Like, what was the first thought you had when you saw the sign?
When I saw the sign, that's really interesting. Like it definitely just like looks like a general purpose thing you're doing. So I was like curious if there's like even a philosophical thing you have, but yeah, I was like I never see people do this. I thought maybe it'd be like something like trivial, but like yeah, I don't know. I thought you maybe had a topic in mind, but then you said it was like general purpose, and I'm like, oh, that's really interesting
Yeah.
that you're just interviewing on
And
anything.
anything you want to talk about.
Yeah,
CAN, right?
yeah, yep. So I just thought that would be like kind of fun. I like yeah, I think it's interesting. Like I do some media stuff, so I was like,
Preferably
what's
something that
going
you
on?
think is true, that you're confident is true about our shared world.
Okay, something that's true,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a hard question.
And to make it harder,
Okay,
uh, uh, see if you can put it into a positive statement.
positive statement.
For example,
Right.
the grass is green, not the grass is not red.
Okay. The positive just meaning like affirmative. Okay.
Yeah.
Um. Since you said shared reality, I think you're thinking people, like other human beings in our shared reality. So, uh, lots of I don't know. What's a shared reality? Because like someone colorblind wouldn't necessarily think the grass was green. Maybe the grass isn't green if that person's colorblind. So it's like what's something shared? Uh, Something shared is that lots of people think differently, but that's a shared reality that we inhabit, right? So we're all gonna like have a different reality, but it's all we all. But the thing that's true is that we all see it differently. That's what that makes me think about.
Okay. So help me narrow that down to a
Yeah,
simple sentence.
people all perceive the world differently is a true statement for everyone in the world. They're all going to see it differently.
Uh, people perceive
The world
the world.
differently from each other. Maybe that's still not negative. Maybe that's still negative. Yeah.
Uh,
Is that not a positive statement?
no, I'm wondering if you would accept instead of the world,
Yeah.
um, people perceive our shared reality differently.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah, that's
Is that
fine.
something that you feel
Yes.
is still accurate?
Yeah. Something that's universally true.
Okay. Um, how confident are you in this statement?
I think only somewhat. It was hard to come up with something that I thought was even universally true. So like maybe middle, like 5 out of 10.
Okay, around 50%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it is that a topic that you want to go with, or do we want to
Sure.
find something else?
No, I like that. Yeah.
Okay. People perceive our shared reality differently. Okay, so um, give me a little more information on what you mean by that.
Um, that it comes down to differences in how like the the actual like elements of something, how people like take in like light and come to a decision about it. For example, of what they see or maybe they don't even. It's still just going to slightly different person to person. So like if they observe one thing, even observational stuff, that people are going to observe differences, and I'm saying the differences in the people rather than the thing they're observing.
Do you mean the physical
yeah
ability to sense things, their sight,
yeah,
their...
even what is still going to even be slightly different. So yeah, therefore they'll the object will be perceived differently, right? It's not even always an object. Like people can perceive other types of concepts through that, and other things that aren't in front of them or observable.
If you were to give a percentage of, let's say, all humankind that
Mhm.
is currently living on Earth, what percentage of them could arguably claim that they perceive things the same way
As other
as
humans.
others?
It's probably how you get to community groups and like how you get to community in the first place. I think you have to come to lots of agreements. Like people have to talk to each other and have to have like experiential. They have to have even like some kind of playing field that they still all inhabit to see it the same way. Like the playing field has to have some similarities, or they have to really communicate clearly and alter their reality to humans alter the reality to fit them, and so then we can perceive the same thing. But
So the example I
Yeah.
gave earlier,
Yeah.
the three of us, the three of them, so the six of us total. How many of us would agree that the grass is green as opposed to some other color?
English speakers, and then maybe some other most other languages that have that word for grass. But then you have languages that have slightly different words with slightly different meanings for that concept.
Okay.
But I think also there's this extra, like, extra real, extraneous to the, that's what I mean, like outside of the people, where yes, it has this quality likely, but then it still like calls into question, is that actually its quality, since that's still a perception formed through the perception of light. But I think it has to do with they have to come from some, and that's a lot of people who are going to agree on that. But like an uncontacted tribe might actually disagree with it. So you can get to lots and lots and lots of people, but not everyone.
If an uncontacted tribe were to disagree, on what grounds do you suppose that might be?
Probably linguistic ones, which is why I said language.
Merely a difference in
Yeah, they have
language?
different words for the colors.
But if there was
that don't quite correspond to that exact color, or maybe even, and in fact that might even be a failure to see. Like they don't have a word for green, so they actually have trouble perceiving it as green.
Okay. Had another question in the queue and it has escaped me.
Oh no,
So
I get that all the time.
All right, so what are factors in addition to linguistics that would affect someone's perspective on something?
I think they're quite complex. If it's something that's largely, it's something where there's a definitely like a big that would be like someone have to just disagree really strongly to really think the grass wasn't green. I think might be delusional, even, I don't know. They'd be hallucinating. There ought to be really complex factors in place sometimes to get people to be able. It's really difficult to elucidate. Like it's difficult to say how you see it differently because then you have to see how you do see it.
Mhm.
So, I think it would be complex. Like yeah, the factors can be quite complicated. There's few black and white issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you say that physiological factors,
Yeah.
for example, color blindness, for
Yes.
example,
Yeah.
and not just visual, uh, but connections in our brains, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Um, okay. And are you comfortable narrowing it down to linguistics and physiological, or are
Sure.
there any other
Yeah.
factors that might
Yeah.
be
You
added?
have like an internal factor and an external factor. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Even though the linguistics is still like the human connections, that's more external to the perception.
Um, assuming, and let's go with contacted
Yeah.
tribes,
Yeah.
assuming that every um, every nation, every language that we are working with has a word for green. Um, uh, and so linguistics is covered, I suppose.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
may be jumping the gun on that. But
Okay.
if you had a pie chart
Mhm.
and were uh, to split linguistics and
Oh. Okay.
physiological as
Yeah.
the reasons for why
And this is just yeah. Just to make it simple, I made it 75,
okay, and can you
25. Yeah.
talk about that?
That's the majority of it. Um, because I think a lot of what mediates our perceptions, again, because reality is external, we kind of have this mediator between the external and ourselves having an internal reality. But some of it is just ourselves. We'll have this mediator called language, and it's shown for many things that does change people's perceptions internally. Is when you get into that. Is the into language. I actually always thought it was very interesting so that one does come to mind that people with different languages do still perceive the world, and I think this is overblown because most of the time people will generally agree though on something, but you could still kind of say they're perceiving it differently. But people are gonna come from they're all speaking the same language for something like that. For lots of things, even if they're agreeing, they have to be using a linguistic medium probably to agree on something actually. But it rarely be like, oh, do we agree that the grass looks green to each other or anything like that? So we're just going on our based on our previous knowledge, which is our language we've already learned, as well as, and that's how you get into culture. It's culturally determined, right? Is what people would say. But I do think it's more like linguistically determined. Like that's a culture. That's still it could be not always, but could be a cultural determination because culture can determine how we really do perceive certain things. That's a cultural belief. That's culturally relative. But yeah, I think actually it's like how we speak, like linguistics or like our communication, something along those lines is what actually mediates us between that reality.
All right, let's try another pie chart. Um, culture or language, which do you suppose has a greater influence on the individual?
I'm gonna go again, maybe less of a 70. It's something to go 50-50, but I think it's this. But yeah, definitely if you between now language includes like culture to me. but it's like a Venn diagram. Maybe it's like a Venn diagram. I'm actually going to go with language because people choose what they learn and what they're around. Culture, kind of, you don't have a choice about. So you navigate the world with, and sometimes like a group can be bigger than your culture. Like all English speakers have a lot of cultures, and sometimes it's smaller, right? So that question is difficult. Like, what do we mean here? But like you get into like subcultures, you get into like these teens use this slang and then they act certain ways, or like, it's definitely a cultural identifier. And culture isn't always a language identifier, but it's frequently language, even like dialects, it becomes an identifier. And an identifier goes to, again, and that's even like further. That's honestly, yeah, identity is pretty like far from the actual reality of things too. But you do get there. It's kind of like a point where you can say something about yourself in reality. So yeah, language is really important for perception. Maybe I'm just saying that because we're talking about common perception. What do people together experience or something? And that requires so much of language. But perception is also what we learn, and we very often learn through kind of shared language. We learn through language most often than not. And maybe that's even a cultural thing. I don't know. But I think we do most of our learning through like different language elements. Even if it's like a picture, you're told what's in the picture. In fact, that's really interesting. Yeah. So that there is some culture there. It's not 100%, or even it's like 60-40, or maybe or to me, because the culture still has to tell you what's in the picture, but you still interpret it through even like a visual language, through language.
Okay. If an anthropologist came across an uncontacted tribe,
Sure.
and knew nothing of the language, would that pie chart change? Is there shared experience based on what can be shared culturally?
I don't know that you can share anything culturally until you share a language. I think it's technically possible. Look how we do this, I suppose, or observe us. But that's considered bad anthropology to study like completely at a distance. So it's complicated. I think that's bad anthropology. I don't know anything about anthropology, but when I've read about this, I've read like the stuff people are saying. You're not supposed to interfere with them, but you're not supposed to observe them like they're not human or something. Like you're just observed totally at a distance. You have to ask them questions. You have to like get clarification.
Okay. Is there
so it's just going to be a language question.
Is there an ethical reason why why anthropologists would maintain a distance?
If the tribe is insistent on not being contacted, but we also don't know very much about those tribes. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that's more ethics or if it's truly impossible if you don't talk to people. Maybe that's just more ethical. It's like ethical to do that, to use language with people. Yeah. Maybe that is an ethical question.
Ornithologists or study birds.
Yeah.
I forget the word for people who study insects.
Yeah.
Is it? What was that?
Entomologists.
Entomologists.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is it possible for them to get a sense of those cultures without being able to communicate with them?
There's a lot more argument, I think, if animals have culture than if animals have language. They do have both. Certain animals are missing one or both, but you're saying, is there a way for them to understand their cultures?
Yeah. Or at least to get an idea of what the culture might be.
Well, famously, June Goodall had to live with her chimps, so maybe she didn't have to do that. Maybe that just appeals to our sense of culture and like sameness. Maybe she didn't have to go live with her chimps. Maybe that is just more ethical to get a sense of that way too.
Could she argue, Jane Goodall?
Yeah.
She argued that that living with the chimps was more beneficial in her studies than merely observing.
She would, but she also got lots of benefits, from like that. It just worked for her. Essentially, it worked for her to do that. I'm sure people have done other things So yeah, like she's considered unusual, but maybe she's not, and maybe other people would do that or do that. She just was famous for doing it for some reason. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But it's commonly accepted that it was better for her to do that.
Do you suppose she could argue that that the chimps have any level of shared experience with humans as far as perception?
I don't know. I think they're very alien. Like I when it was like they're very unusual. I mean, like there was like myths about them. Like they're very different and they're very violent and things. Like I don't think they really understood like I don't know if they actually like had a sense of like because like the empathy that flows is kind of one way. Like you have empathy for the animal, but I'm not sure the animal can actually understand you all the time. But then people's pets can understand them. But for the chimps, yeah, like could they really perceive things the same way a person could? I guess it's technically possible, but I think we try to not think like animals too. Like we try to again, coming back to how we try to be as people, the influences, even cultural influences we use, we try to be a certain way. So like our like in a sense they don't have as much culture as we do. We have a lot of culture, let's say. That's a very big difference too, is we still have lots of culture compared to animals. That tells us not to act like animals or even see things that way. That really defines us maybe as humans. So that can be the major difference. It's not impossible.
Let's make this easy and put it on a scale.
Okay.
How important do you find this subject?
How important do I find? It definitely came to mind. I don't know if animal rights came to mind or like animals, but yeah, coming up with a, I guess coming up with like an ultimate truth isn't very important, but like acknowledging like how reality works is kind of important. Like you can kind of tell I maybe do like study stuff academically too. So I'm like I do want to come up with like some hypotheses. I do want to have some shared ideas of reality or even discuss, like epistemology and such. But I can't pretend like I understand all of it. So it's really hard for me to come up with these statements too. I think I've kind of tricked myself out of thinking maybe logically and rationally by being too philosophical in the first place. But yeah, so my original subject is important to me. Like we all have different perceptions is important to me. But the rest of it, whether animals do, I don't really care. But yeah, and I wouldn't even know how to make an ultimate statement.
Okay.
So that's a lot about myself. When you ask, is that important to you? I have to tell you about myself.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
find a good follow-up question because some of these no longer apply.
because it's too important, or
No,
to me.
like basically the same question. How confident are you in this belief?
Yeah.
Has your, or you put yourself out at a 5 out of 10
Yeah, on confidence.
earlier.
Yeah.
Would you still stay with that at this point in the conversation?
Oh, definitely. That's why it's like important for me to think about and consider. It's something I'm not certain about.
What are some questions that you could ask yourself
Yeah.
that might change that confidence level up or down?
What can I learn about this to make me more confident? What do I know already? What are the other considerations? Exactly, like it kind of expanding my view, though. Expanding my view and maybe narrowing the question. Definitely. Making so the question is a smaller, easier, bite-sized question. But it's difficult to do that.
Willing to give that a shot?
Sure.
See if you can narrow it down?
Yeah.
How would you rephrase the question?
How do you phrase it?
So this was the original claim that we started with.
Yeah, something about like the interaction between our reality and our brain, maybe something like that. Like people's. it's not like people's a lot of people's brains can be very similar. The brain is supposed to work a few certain ways. So I don't know if it's just the brain, like you're supposed to have all the parts and like the cerebellum and whatnot. So that's not what I'm trying to say, but they do work differently sometimes, or a lot, or all the time. Yeah. Reality is mediated. That sounds broader for human beings. Humans mediate. Yeah, I don't know. That's the same broadness. That's still really broad. I don't know. Humans choose the real. I don't know. See what am I trying to say here? That's getting way too broad. Humans can communicate. Humans can always choose to communicate with each other about the reality. That's something I think is always true. Or humans can. This is already about reality. Humans can always communicate, yeah, with each other.
How confident are you in that claim?
That's not a broad. Maybe 60. That's pretty broad. Two completely foreign like people with nothing in common would have difficulty, but there is some possible way. It's not like they'd have to maybe go get learn each other's language or even have another person to help them, but they can always, yeah, in some way communicate with each other. So give that a 60. Humans can always communicate. Yeah, humans are a communicating species. I'm trying to get it higher than 60. It's at 60% for me.
And how?
Yeah.
How does that relate to the original claim of people perceive our shared reality differently?
Because I guess that's kind of like a little bit of the negative of that. They're both positive ways. So that's what's tricky. People can communicate their reality. Humans can always communicate. Yeah, so we move somewhat. Can always communicate because they'll perceive it differently, relating to how humans can communicate. Usually humans can perceive reality by communicating. That just sounds weird. Through communication. Humans can change reality. Humans can move through reality. Humans can alter reality. Humans can communicate. Humans can communicate. Maybe I'm thinking yeah, humans can communicate their reality. Humans can communicate in reality. Yeah. Humans can communicate their reality is probably where we're at.
Humans can communicate reality?
Yeah, reality. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
What might you see as the difference between what is true and what is accurate? Or
right.
defining the difference between those two.
I think truth is more conditional than accuracy. Accuracy just has to agree with a certain point. There's less of a demand for proof. With accuracy, accuracy is just about how much precision is how much things agree with each other, right? We know that one. Precision. Accuracy is how much you're accurate to some other thing, basically. I point out a point, now you have to hit that point. So you just have to kind of agree conditionally, where truth can really change. The truth of something can really change. too. I think there's certain things that people like very like to hold on to because they're very true, probably, or it was very true to them. Yeah, it's a lot more conditional. Truth is very conditional.
Can you give me an example of a conditional
A
truth?
conditional truth. Oh, I don't know. That's why it's so hard. Like, what is a truth? Like, what is the truth? Like, people do argue on what even truth is in some circumstance. Truth is something that is largely agreed upon in lots of cases. I hardly think that truth is absolutely relative in all cases. Um, Truth is kind of where you have to agree with even reality. I don't know the reality of agrees with people, whereas accuracy is just agreeing with the last guy that pointed out something. It's very similar to precision that way because it's just, but you're trying to, there's an external standard. Accuracy is about an external standard where truth is truth at least cares about what reality is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Would you mind jumping in here? Do you have any questions?
I think that was great. Did you get to talk about why the main reason is a strong enough reason to support the amount of confidence you have in the original claim being true?
The original claim? Yeah. I feel like, I don't know. I don't know if I just have one reason.
The main reason.
The main reason I find the
supports it
original claim true.
Because I think you made a pie chart and it was like 75-25.
Oh yeah, what was language?
Or language and physiology
Yeah.
being the factors in perceived
Perhaps,
reality.
yeah, on the movie, the two extremes of how it's seen.
Yeah, so language was a stronger reason?
Yeah, it was a stronger reason for why we perceive it differently.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why is that reason a strong enough reason to be, how confident were you?
50-50. I'm like, I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but I think I'm right. Like,
okay.
It's a pretty big claim.
Why is that a good reason to support how right you think you are about it?
Is the language a big enough reason? Because language is really broad. We managed to find words for everything, but not everyone knows every single thing.
So the broadness of the reason
the broadness of the
makes
reason
it a good reason.
Makes it a good reason, for a broad claim. For a narrower claim, I think the entirety of human language makes claims broader than my claim. That's why it's a better reason than physiology. Yeah.
Cool. That was fun.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
That was fun. I really like that conversation. That went a lot of places I wasn't expecting.
If you're interested in learning more about street epistemology, that has the website.
Awesome. I know people who would be interested. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And you already got the QR code and checked out his.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna do that.
Check out some of his videos. I'm just a guest on his.
Okay.
Cool.
I'll have to really check it out and see all. Yeah, I was like, what do you think? What's your deal? So I'll have to see what that is. Okay.
But do you have any questions for us? Or
CAM?
I think I'm actually kind of familiar with the street interviews. That's why I stopped. But okay.
Thank for stopping.
Yeah, thank you so
much
much for having me. I love talking anyway. So.
What was that like?
This one with Cam. And I have to admit, I was having a hard time keeping up with what they were saying. Like I would assume that I was following the train of thought, and then yeah, just
Do you remember that survey I was telling you about? The SE
Yes.
survey about truth? So number 2 is, and again, these statements you have them assign a certain amount of agreement to, from strongly disagree all the way to strongly agree. And the statement is, we all share the same reality and only interpret it differently.
Okay.
So it's like almost verbatim what Cam's claim was, right? And so I thought that was interesting. And it sounded like they had a pretty good grasp on the difference between, the grass is existing for everyone, even if we're all perceiving it differently. Like, is that the sense that you got? Because that's the sense that I got.
I could agree with that. It was, I guess I was taken aback on how focused they were on the linguistic aspect as opposed to the perceptive. Like, that language had such an impact on perception, even more so than physiology. Is that the right word?
I think that's the word that you guys were discussing.
Uh,
Like, that was the other piece of the pie, right?
yeah. Yes.
Okay. So what does that tell you?
That although they seemed to know what they were talking about, I got kind of flummoxed and didn't know where to go with it because
Yeah.
I was caught up on the linguistic aspect.
Maybe a question might have been like, what does language have to do with this?
True.
How does language connect with our perceptions?
Probably, I'm going to speculate that their emphasis on language is about the shared. Like, shared is the key word here, as opposed to perception or reality.
We share language, therefore we can communicate our perceptions about reality?
Yeah. That seems to be what the discussion was for Cam.
So, like, if we were in a different country and we didn't speak the language, would our perceptions of reality change?
It's an interesting
Or
thought.
how would our perceptions of reality change? Would be a better question, I think, because that's more open-ended.
And yeah, now I'm wishing that I had thought along these lines because I have more questions that I would like to ask him.
Well, maybe you'll see Cam again and can continue.
And this may be a question for someone who isn't Cam.
Yeah.
Or someone who is multilingual. Could it be argued that, I guess, if you're raised with one language, or if you're raised with two languages, how might perceptions change based on being bilingual, or even 3 or 4? Or if you acquire a language, does that change your perception at all, or are you pretty much stuck with your core language, your languages? If you grew up speaking both English and Spanish and then you acquire Italian, can that affect your perception?
And how? And if so, how would it?
Yeah.
How could it?
And how could that be tested?
Yeah.
That could be some interesting stuff.
Yeah.